Welcome back to the channel, everyone. I'm Anthony with AZ Overland, where I teach DIYers how to modify, maintain, and repair their off-road vehicle. I usually focus on 4Runners and Tacomas, but today I'm going to focus on a different Toyota platform. I picked up a cheap 3rd gen RAV4, and we're going to modify it and make it a very capable Overland vehicle. Today, we're going to focus on a lift kit. So stick around, and I'll take you through the whole process on how to lift a 3rd gen RAV4. This is a 2011 RAV4 V6 all-wheel drive. And this is our base platform right here. I do have before measurements on all the wheel wells, and they're taken from the center of the hub up to the bottom of the wheel well. I also did measure the lowest part in the front, which is 7.5 inches, and the lowest part in the rear, which is the exhaust, 9.25 inches. This is the lift kit I ended up going with. This is from Northwoods Performance out of Idaho. If you watched the channel before, you know I like to support these small family-run businesses, and this is exactly that. Nathan is the owner, and I had a good conversation with him as I was researching all the lift kits that are available for the RAV4, and there are not many available. I thought about piecing one together, but even if you piece together, you're probably still paying about the same amount as a fully assembled tuned spring kit specifically for the RAV4. So it does come with, on the front side, 2 end links for the kit that I ordered. This is a 1.5 inch lift. I upgraded the shocks on both the front and the back to the Bilstein B4s, and it does come with all the appropriate hardware as well. I do have a skid plate I also ordered from Northwoods Performance, and that's going to be a separate install video. But today we're going to focus on the 1.5 inch lift. So let's go ahead and start with the fronts. We're going to start on the passenger side. We're in the engine compartment right now, and towards the firewall is the top of the strut, and there's 3 nuts up here. So let's go ahead. We're not going to remove them all. These are 14 millimeter, and we're just going to loosen them at first, and then we'll remove 2 and leave 1 in. This back one right here, I cannot fit the deep socket on. So I'm going to show you a little trick to get some leverage. If you can't break it free with a 14 millimeter wrench, just take another wrench like this and hook it on to the 14 on the open side, and just get the leverage to get the nut started. And now we're going to go ahead and we're going to take off 2 nuts. There's 1. So when it's all the way at the top, you can just pull it out together like that. And then this last one here, we're going to leave on, and just going to leave it loose. And you'll see why later this is important. All right, so in the passenger wheel well, tire is off. We're going to remove the sway bar end link right here and replace it with one that's in the kit. This one's a little tricky. It's got a 6 millimeter Allen head that's in the center, and then you need to slide a wrench over and take that off. That's a 14 millimeter. If you live in a rust belt, or if you have any kind of corrosion, we're lucky enough in Arizona, this is pretty solid car. Go ahead, and I did it anyway, go ahead and hit all your bolts that you're going to be removing with WD-40 or some kind of penetrant oil. So we're going to remove the top one and the bottom one, remove this end link, and then we'll go ahead and remove these 2 large ones as well. So that nut is a 17. And we're going to try to loosen it first. I feel it moving a little bit. Okay, so it's moving. So now we're going to hold the center part with that 6 millimeter Allen head. There we go. So thankfully the top one is not giving me a problem. Let's go ahead and move on to the bottom one, which is low down right here. All right, so there's your sway bar end link, and we're going to be replacing this. Next step, we're going to look on this side of the strut assembly, and we're going to see A couple bolts we need to take off, only to, as the spindle drops, is to release some of the tension so we're not putting tension on the ABS line or the brake line. Let's go ahead and remove bolt number 1 and bolt number 2 right here, which are 14 millimeter. Also, if you're potentially unsure of where they're going to go ahead and snap a picture of the way they're routed right now, just in case. All right, that's 2. And then we're going to pull it off. So this is actually a bracket that's onto the strut assembly. So either way, it will need to be taken off. And then there's a little clip right here. Right here. You just take a little screwdriver. Then we're going to flip it open. And then the ABS line will come out. Okay, there's the ABS line. So now we have everything, all tension off, because this spindle is going to lower down a little bit. We're going to work on these two 22 millimeter bolts will come out. That's the last thing holding the strut assembly in, with the exception of that one bolt that's up in the passenger side of the engine compartment. I'm going to get a jack underneath the lower control arm to relieve some of the tension here. So I put a jack underneath the lower control arm just beyond the rotor, and that just, I didn't jack it up, I just left it there, just put a little bit of tension on it, so that gives me a little bit less stress on these 2 bolts for the strut. So let's go ahead and remove these two 22 millimeter right now. Yeah, I'm going to use a breaker bar. I might need to put a pipe on here too, we'll see. Wow. Yeah, these are super tight. Hopefully, all right. I do have the jack underneath supporting this. I don't know if you saw, the whole thing just came down, and thankfully the jack is there. So the jack, I can jack up and relieve a little stress right in that bolt. If you watch this bolt right here, when I move the jack up and down, you can see the stress, I can relieve the stress from it. So right now, it's got very little stress and it'll come out. If you don't have a jack under there, the downward pressure is going to put a lot of resistance on those bolts, and they're going to be a pain in the butt to come out. So right now, this strut is ready to come out. It's a very simple job. If I pull this back slightly and pull the strut there, so this is the reason you can see it hanging. It's the reason why we took the 2 bolts out and we just left that one loose up top. So now I'm going to hold this, push it up, and then remove that nut on top. Okay. So just be careful with the brake lines and the ABS line. And now, so right here we have the whole assembly out, and we'll bring it on over to the table, get the new one, put the new one in. I have the new strut assembly right here. So there is a left and a right. So you take the other one out, match it up, so you know you're putting the right one in. Now this is the hard part, where it helps to have an extra set of hands if possible. These are pretty heavy. So you have to put these 3 studs on top, up through, and then you're going to have to hold it with one hand up and then tighten one of the nuts from the top. All right, I have a nut up there right now. Now I'm going to try to realign everything here. All right, we're going to have to drop this down a little bit to give us a little more room. Good. And then we can line these back up. Use the jack underneath to help you line these up. So on this side, we're going to put together our ABS lines and our brake lines now. Also to note, this is the ABS, what they call the ABS body mount bracket, and it's suggested from Northwoods is you actually bend that in towards the strut a little bit, towards the front, and that gives it a little bit more play with the ABS line here, a little more slack. So now we're going to install the end links. We'll make sure everything is torqued up, but we're going to go ahead and grease the end links before we install them. These are the end links here, so we're going to grease them. These are the Zerks. You have one on each side. So load your grease gun up, put it on your Zerk, and I like to keep an eye right here. If the grease is coming out, you could also see it expanding sometimes. So I think usually 3 pumps will be sufficient. Keep an eye on that. 1, 2, 3. I'll give it one more. 4. I can already see it. The grease has made its way there. So snap that off. I'll just work this in. And you can see the grease coming right around here. I'll just give it a quick wipe. And then we'll do the other side. 1, 2, 3. I'll give it one more. I'm going to install the end links now. You're going to make sure that on the top mount here, the Zerk, the grease Zerk is facing the rear. Okay? So these are 18 millimeter bolts, and they'll get torqued to 55 pound-feet. There's a hex fitting on the inside that you need to hold with an 18 also. So everything down below is installed and torqued to spec. There's 3 more nuts left, which are here on top. I hand tighten those. Now we're not going to torque those until we have both sides installed, tires on, and we lower it down on its own weight. At that point, we'll torque these to 37 pound-feet. Also, we're not going to be using the nuts that came out. We're going to be using the thick washer and the nut for all 3 of these that came in the kit. I'm going to go ahead and do the other side. We're going to drop the car. We'll torque these down. The front will be complete, and we'll work our way to the back. These are the components for the rear. We have the Bilstein B4 shocks, and we have the coil springs. I've also already hit all the bolts that I'm going to be taking out or loosening with WD-40. So we're on the passenger side, and what we're going to do is replace the shock, which is right here. There are 2 bolts that are up here. They're 17 millimeter. It's a little tight, so you need 2 17-inch wrenches to reach those. We're going to remove the lower bolts here as well for the shock. On the lower arm here, we're going to loosen that front bolt, which is called the inboard bolt, and we're going to take out this outboard bolt, which is underneath the rotor here. We're going to put a jack stand underneath the support, lower the arm, and then we can remove this coil spring right here. So here's the shock here, and I'm going to look up. I don't know if this is going to show or not, but there's 2 bolts. Well, there's a bolt that goes through, and then there's a nut. Let's see if I can focus in on there. 17 on the bolt, 17 on the nut. The nut is right up against the frame here, or against the body. So you need a 17 open end, but also this one folds, so it's a stubby. Because if you have a long wrench, you're gonna hit the suspension components. So it has to be able to get in there. And what I would do is just get it in there first, and I already did, and then just loosen it. And that bolt on the other side is staying put, so I can just loosen it up, and if the bolt starts to turn, then get another wrench on that one. I have the lower shock out, and it does require you to remove the 2 bolts that are underneath, or the bolt won't come out of the lower mount of the shock. All right, the 14 millimeter sway bar end link. I'm gonna loosen this one here. This one's gonna be real tight. That's all you need to do, just so it can swing down. Now we're gonna take out this right now so we could swing this down. Make sure there's a jack supporting. All right, gotta be careful now. Got a lot of tension on there. All right, now we lower it gently so we get that coil spring out. All right. Okay. So here's the coil spring that came out. Now you want to transfer these isolators over. Also, there's an isolator located in that A-arm right there. This one is a little torn up. Unfortunately, Northwoods Performance didn't have them in stock, and they're not easy to get, or else I would have been replacing those. But if they have them in stock and you get the suspension kit, get the isolators. All right, here they are side by side, and the smaller diameter, like I said, is on top right here. But you want to take this isolator off, and I'm going to show you. You see it as a little end piece right here? That butts right up against here, which means it would butt up right there on the new one. Then just press it in. Okay, now let's head back to the car. We're going to put this in, put the new shock in, and button this up. On the lower part where the coil goes, right here in the A-arm, please pay attention to this isolator as well. So there's an end point, it's a little notch out right here. So that pigtail, or the end of the coil spring, needs to butt up right against there, otherwise it's not going to sit correctly. Also up here, where the coil spring seats on the upper mount, you have to make sure there's no gaps there as well. It should sit perfectly flush in there. So we're going to check the bottom part, the top isolator, and then the top mount part. And once it looks good, then you can go ahead and finish the install on this. I have the bracket on the shock here, just loose, and I'm going to work on getting the upper mount in place, because that is a challenge, that one. All right, I got lucky with that one. It's in there. I'm going to line these on the bottom here. All right, guys, this is the last part to go in, is the nut for the end bar sway link. And as I said, this one goes to 22 foot-pounds. Keep in mind that the lower arm, the inboard bolt, and the outboard bolt are not to be torqued yet. We're going to get the wheel on, drop this on its own weight, and then torque those down. Hey guys, by the way, if you don't have something like this, consider getting it. They're just these little pucks, and they have these channels in them with these magnets inside. So basically you just shove these up on the pinch weld, and then you put your jack underneath. And if you don't want to bend your pinch welds, these things are great. I have two, one for each side. All right guys, lift is done. Let me show you the final result before it settles. By the way, you didn't really think I was going to keep those tires on, did you? Let's go change them out. All right, I have the tires on the vehicle now. I'm going to show you what it looks like now that we have the final look. The stance is not final, but the look is. It's a 245, 65, 17 Mickey Thompson Baja Voss all-terrain. The audio got a little funky on me, so I'm going to explain what I meant. This is not the final stance. I just dropped the car down, and the suspension is still new and tight. It's got to settle. It's going to take a little time to do that. And as a matter of fact, I did record some video about 5 days after I installed the lift and a few hundred miles. So it's pretty much settled to the height it's going to be. And I'll cut away right now and show you what it looks like presently, and I'll share the measurements with you where it sits right now. This is what it looks like right now, and I think the suspension is probably going to be where its final stance is. And in the front right now, even though it's a 1.5 inch lift, I'm sitting right around 1 3/4 inches. And in the rear, it's lifted right around 1 1/4 inches. So to me, that's actually perfect. I do plan on adding a little weight to the front and back. You'll see some of the modifications that are coming to the RAV4. So the added weight will probably bring it down to right around an inch and a half lift. So overall, extremely happy with it. The install went smoothly. If you have any questions, if you're doing a lift yourself, have any questions, please ask them below. I do answer all comments. Also, stay tuned because those wheels are not staying silver. I'm going to show you how I changed the color on the wheels, as well as I'm doing some interior mods. I'm adding the skid plate, and also I'm possibly changing the color of the vehicle. So stick around. If you haven't subscribed, please do so now. I appreciate you hanging around. Don't forget, life begins where the pavement ends, and I'll see you in the next one, guys.